baaraam ma jox suma phone bi ak charger bi please thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Sira, and welcome to you all. I wish to take this opportunity to welcome you all, and I also take cognizance of some of the victim-led organizations that are here, and I must also thank the various victim-led organizations for organizing this. I think it's timely, although impromptu, but very timely, because we all know what is on the table. All of us are aware of what brought us here. I mean, we've been opportune to read on the media on the victim amnesty that was given by the TRRC Amnesty Committee in terms of ensuring that Sana Sabali be given amnesty. I think that is outrageous, and it is discouraging and disheartening to hear. And against that background, that is why this meeting has been organized, to have our voices heard and also to say what we felt as an organization, as an institution. And I think I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come for this meeting, and I hope the deliberations will be well spoken. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of the press article yesterday by the Standard newspaper that the TRRC's Amnesty Committee has granted approval for and submitted to the minister as a recommendation for Sana Sabali to be granted amnesty. And like he said, it's outrageous. It's something that we are totally against. We have here the families of the November, some of the families of the November 11th massacre, the widows on my right. On my left, immediate left, I have Aisa Tomorrow, the widow of Basiru Kamara, and we have Fatou Sow Jaite, the widow of Fafanyan. We have in our midst also Mamadou Silla, the brother of Amadou Silla. I can see him somewhere. I think he just came in. The other family members, like Mr. Yala said, it was impromptu. It was very impromptu that we decided that we cannot stay silent. We would have done it yesterday, but because of Juma, we couldn't. So the others are not able to be here, but they are with us in spirit. They are equally outraged and very disheartened. We have on the next agenda reading a formal press statement, but Fatou has to go. She has pressing matters. So we will allow her to make her personal statement on her behalf, on the behalf of our family first, and then we can have Mohammed Sandeng read the formal statement before we proceed. Fatou, Bismillah.
ñun duñ Gambians parce que su fekkee doomi Gambia lañ lu ñoo war a jël te mu affect ñu dañu war a oo ñu waxtaan ci loolu number one la ba pare lu mel ni affaire yi Sana Sabally pour ñu jox ko amnesty te ñun victimes yi nga xam ne ñun lañ rey suñ jëkkër yi lieutenant Papa Niang lieutenant Dot Fall lieutenant Basirou Baro Sergeant Niang nga neem leen ñoom ñaata ñoom lieutenant Sey ñëpp ñu rey leen rey boo xam ne bi Sana Sabally di taxaw di ko wax regrettu si dara daf ne ñii ennemis lañ te ennemi soo ko téyee dafa mel ni soo téyee jaan da nga war a dog boppa bi soo loolu noonu rek dafa dog xol kooku soo ko waroon a jégal sax doo ko jégale ci soo lan moo tax kon ñoom ñu ñëw ak lii xanaa dañ ñu bëgg a jékkali after bi nga xamee ne ñun dañ dee ba pare di dox soo loolu mënuñ koo understand te mënuñ koo accept te duñ ko accept loolu lañ bëgg a président Adama Barrow xam ne ñun doomi réew mi lañ nañu jox suñ cër jox ñu suñ wàll bàyyee ñu li nga xam ne ñun ñoo ko moom na toog ak ñun victime si mu wax ak ñun mu xam ñun lan lañ bugga gis nga suñ buggee ñu baalal nit ñi dañoo accept ne liñ def dafa wrong te ñu ngi koo regret te du amati waaye ki nga xam ne dafa taxaw mu wone ne ñii enemies lañ and they will still be enemies xanaa sa ennemi sax soo ko jàppee mun nga koo dem nga teg ko benn place waaye loolu doyu la da nga fiil ne kii da nga ko war a rey ak rey ni miitee nga bàyyi jigéen boobu noonu mu toog ñaata at ak ay doomam du struggle government da xanaa xamuñ si ñun liñ jaar dañ nekk ay xale yu ndaw di dundal lu miiti suñ parents si rek ñoo ñu si fekkoon kenn ñemeñu ta wax mu miiti lool soo su fekkee ne day ñëw ba léegi ñun ñëpp ñoo ko vote in mu toog lu tax du ñu jox suñ cër te ñun ay jigéen lañ moom moo ñu war a dimbale moom suñ càmmeñ la lu tax muy joxe amnesty ak amnesty bi lañ nanguwuñ ko tey nanguwuñ ko ëllëg Sana Sabally kenn du ko amnesty because moom regrettu dara loo xam ne loolu la def soo maa ngee wax président Adama Barrow ne ngir yàlla na toog mu wax ak victim center na toog mu wax ak njabooti ñi nga xam ne November 11 lañ November 11 dafa metti it was the first of its kind si biir Gambia mu nekk lu metti torop ñuy ut suñ jëkkër yi gisuñ leen ñuy wër fu nekk di daw ñaata fan man maa ngi ut Sadio Niang ñaata fan maa ngi amee suma xale yi ñu nekk lu ndaw may duga fu nekk benn leen ma xam ne ñu ne dañ ko rey man maa ngi jooy dee yi doon faan ndekete moom ci ñi ñu rey si la bokk ak ñoom sëy boobu noonu mu ngi ngénte 1 week rek la xale bi ñu demoon nañ si ngénte soo lu tax moom mënoon ñoo jox suñu cër en tant que doomi Gambie lu tax mënu ñoo jox suñu cër en tant que ay jigéen yoo xam ne dañ daj lu métti dunda ak lu métti ak suñu njaboot yi kenn fekka si wuñu fi suñ daji jëkkër yi sax ñemeñuñ koo annoncé kenn ñemeñu ta ñëw jaale si kenn ñemeñu ta ñëw dimbale si ba léegi nii waaye président Barrow ñu laa wax ne la li nga xam ne ñun mooy suñ aha ak suñ yelleef balaa ngaa jox keneen aha ak yelleef boo xam ne jox ñu suñ bos njëkk jërëjëf
jërëjëf Fatou métier bi moom kenn mënu koo xayma comme ni ko ay sadee waxee rek who feels it knows it mbir mi ki ko ñam rek moo xam naka la ñu di leen gën a wax ne ñu ngi seen boor saa yu nekk you're not alone we are behind you ñu ngi seen gannaaw saa yu nekk te duñ leen bàyyi duñ leen musa bàyyi it doesn't matter ndax victime nga ndax doo direct victime nga doo direct victime lii ñëpp la affect every Gambian and every citizen of the world Fatou jërëjëf xam nañu da nga war a dem kon ñu ngi la jégal nga continuer jërëjëf and just pour wax ne Fatou is a candidate Fatou candidate la si National Assembly members yi so ñu di ko di leen ñaax ñi nga xam ne tamit ñu support ko parce que dina mën a represent victory si well mooy PDOIS candidate for Serekunda West so am na solo lool jigéen ñi taxaw fa number 1 number 2 as a victim tamit mu nekk fa di represent victim interest te am nañ Fatou yaakaar si Fatou torop parce que one of the board members si victim center bi as the treasurer. Next we will go back to agenda item number 3, reading of the formal press statement that was put together We'll have Mohammed Sandeng, who will read on behalf of the November 11 families, as well as all other victims of human rights violations and all other defenders of human rights. Mohammed.
Thank you, Antecedera, for giving me the floor. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, it gives me a feeling of honor to read this statement on behalf of all the families and those in solidarity. And the statement reads, victims say no to TRRC's amnesty approval for Sana Sabally. Victims of November 11, 1994, together with other families of victims of various human rights violations during the regime of Yahya Jammeh and a coalition of Gambian organizations condemned in the strongest possible terms the approval of an amnesty for former AFPRC Vice Chairman Sana Sabally by the TRRC Amnesty Committee and Commissioners, and argued the Gambia government through the Minister of Justice to disregard this recommendation. On 24th and 25th April 2019, Sana Sabally appeared before the TRRC and confessed to killing at least 12 Gambian National Army soldiers accused of overthrowing or staging a counter-coup against the just installed AFPRC regime. Lieutenant Basiru Barrow, Lieutenant 𝗙𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀, Lieutenant 𝗵𝗔𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and Sergeant Ibrahima Lieutenant Buba Jammeh, Sergeant Fafanya, Lieutenant Lamin Dabo, Sergeant Basiru Kamara, and Lieutenant Bakari Sane, alias Nyancho, as well as Lieutenant Abdoulaye Ba and Cadet Amadou Silla. In his testimony, Sana Sabally did not apologize to the families of the soldiers that were executed, as he claimed they were in a situation of war and he saw them as enemies, not captured soldiers that were to be treated humanely. He said that he ordered for the bodies to be taken and be buried at the Yundum barracks, and acknowledged that they were not given the proper Muslim burials or the proper burials that they were entitled to. I quote, "They were not entitled to decent treatment as they were enemies, and enemies cannot be treated properly," in the words of Sana Sabally. And quote again, "I grew up without my father, without his love and companionship, which was very difficult for me and my family. A day doesn't go by without me being traumatized by the events and mannerism in which him and his colleagues, his companions, were gruesomely killed on the day of November 11. His death was sanctioned by a coward and carried out by an unrepentant, remorseless, and degenerate individual. My family deserves justice, so do all the families affected by Sana Sabally and his henchmen," said Abubakar Barrow, son of Lieutenant Basiru Barrow. Abdul Aziz Barrow, rather. In its final report, which was publicly released on December 24, 2021, the TRRC found Sana Sabally, 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗀, Yankuba Toure, and Yahya Jammeh as perpetrators bearing the greatest of responsibilities for the crimes committed on November 11, 1994. They were found responsible for the torture, assault, beating, and extrajudicial killing of the 11 GNA soldiers and tortured, brutalized, and arbitrary 11 GNA soldiers and the torture, beating, arbitrary, unlawful detention of 5 private soldiers. Sana Sabally was found responsible for subjecting numerous people to human rights violations. The announcement of the amnesty comes as a shock to the victims, given that according to Section 19, subsection 3 of the TRRC Act, Sana Sabally should not qualify for amnesty because the crimes he committed form part of crimes against humanity. This therefore renders the approval illegal and thus should not be acted on by the government of the Gambia. Victims also wish to express their outrage and displeasure at the manner in which they received the information, which was through the media yet again. There was no prior consultation with families of direct victims who have been forced to live through the trauma of Sana Sabally and coerced brutal acts for 3 years. Victims further decried the lack of transparency and zero victim participation in the amnesty policy development and approval process, and demand that this be disclosed to the victim who wish to know and victim organizations forthwith. I quote, "𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 confessed to killing our husbands. If they say they are going to set him free, we do not have the power to stop it per se, but we are not happy about it. If we have not forgiven him and cannot forgive him, setting him free is going to be traumatizing and painful for us. The entire family is suffering from a pain that cannot be measured truly." Stated by 𝗵𝗵𝗶, widow of Lieutenant 𝗵𝗺𝗀. We would like to remind the Commission that victims are not incidental, but bona fide stakeholders with a role to play and the right to participate in the transitional justice process, including any amnesty process. This has been reiterated on several occasions, yet the Commission and the government continue to disregard the victims over and over again. Lack of transparency in the amnesty approval process is abysmal and contrary to the Never Again slogan and spirit. We demand that 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏's amnesty approval is disregarded and warn the government that we will fight against this and any other decision which denies us the right to justice and a say in the transitional justice processes in the Gambia. Signed, Abubakar Abdul Aziz Barrow, for the family of Basiru Barrow, Abdoulaye J. Dabo for Lieutenant Lamin Dabo, Awanjai for Abdoulaye 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏, and 𝗿𝗏𝗲𝗀𝗏 for the family of Ibrahima M.C.C., and Fatou Jammeh for the family of Buba Jammeh, Fatou Mane for the family of Bakary Mane, and Fatou Sow for the family of Fafa Nyang, Aissatou Marong for Basiru Kamara, and Mati Seka for Abdoulaye Ba, Mbaya Damba for 𝗵𝗺𝗀, and Mamadou Silla for Amadou Silla. Other victims of human rights violations under the Yahya Jammeh's regime, civil society organizations like Aniket, Fantanka, Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations, Solo Sending Foundation, WAVE, and WILL. The statement ends.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for reading out that statement on behalf of the November 11 families, all other victims of human rights violations, and civil society organizations, whether we are in the human rights field or whatever, because all of us have been devastated by the news, and like you said in your statement, very shocked. We've made copies of the statement for the press. It's available, and if you also want to leave your email address, we can share the soft copy with you for the press. So we have a few of the copies available here, hard copy, and if you leave your email address, like I said, we will send you a copy of the soft. We will send you a soft copy. Next on the agenda, I have the widow of Basiru Kamara, Aissatou Marong. Aissatou will make a personal statement on her behalf, on behalf of her family. Aissatou, bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Ntetumu Aissatou Marong neti kabo Sajan Basiru Kamara la family to. Ndolde kabiri nganyeng ko moy sana sabar la ko moy akata nyenni ku ya me yalon ko mandan dula sotwar. Ndol ngamira mbe mem moy la anin nata mem moy wol manke kilingoti. Katumo na e kukela mi yalon ko amambete ya janni tebe lole ba fula ko nga bulale ay kuke men nula ini wolle ka nyoje nyoya folo barin tolma woso kabiri wo ma sakunda folo min tambeta foka na fo hansa ni ma sakunda fo min be keri ntol nene ma ne se woso toje ala e duwolunda nin ni ku ya kallale na ka wudi ya jamela jamano saya keta men han furiya ni ba mutala e kam mabu bungole kono mbuka hani ya tandi ko min ko be furiya ande nin nata wo ko leya be ta fa nata bang sai nata ko alinga ajibe sai ngam sakunda do to mbom minni wodum mankiliya yara fandum mbota min kono wode fa lafta fi siyala bulata min kono katu mi ye fata do mandindrom wala maka fa ko ise loye diya mo fo ye bulo wulinde ka tandi dunya la ko min ko be nyim batale ko barna manke woti femme fata ngamira sai na fa on dunta ko leya ko min tambita parce que ika fole abukaki inin kumbodro ale duolunda ntolnin ni ko yala kala na ka wuli batanen bata koleyanen koleya kuma di matije mbeddi bo kono do sai na fa on dunta di bo ko parce que sai nten tembe tembo min do malo mune be kere ani muna kake nka moy le ko nyenne ntol sembol mu nyunu minuti kuma buka foy min saltan din tol la ko ntol nyanta kala nyen silolla wara manyan tala nyen silolla wo buka tarakeri sai ntol ko kan bata dorong ko le ya dorong woto ala fo barway ko ay fero ken ay njibe ay bonni moltema woto ay bonni dunya moltema ntol fa nganna problème mol kem fa may ba badi ate man pare ka tan di dunya la ko min ko ntol be batar nembe ko bol hani falo na dun te la kankan ko na ila kankan otinya ibuka fa ikata kankan tiyo ya fa ila falo ina kankan otinya surtout hada madi min yalo ko anani ya famuta ya fa ya sare imal la fala moli yaro isa ko bo sanji mo anen fula fali moy sai ko boy na ko tak min jawya ntol man da haso be batar na hani woto ala fo baroy ko ne a taranun ko ate de maro kelani ay bon nin duniya molti ma bam fanga je be rokem famay katu ko le ya warata bata warata kumbo warata saya kunan kunan ata bayila moy ni la ma woni la ma fo fa bar ni be fala fana ngamer ni fata sila senwal wala fanam fe seata bar ye mo fa ko wuro hani la wulu kendo ita fay la dingo ko no nyam yen tol keli fay wala nyam hani say nimbata victime de Gambia kono mi yalon ka daata victime o bebe ko bol bebe jakal hani bi dal diya mota jampal na diya mota jampala ba amiran sa dan janne to ko hakil ma al sa tente yamira baro fa samira na fa la mole bulata nyen kono bi abe min kala woni nyen takliya ba bala hajo doronna baro nin tabe sirin ameta kabira mamma saya fa man saya tan saya na be sirin kata beda min be wala bara mallom malo bar kabirin karte fa yo site ko ngadi ala mobe la dia mun kam fo sabo bata ko bar sai na bata la fa oto ngamobe konto ngamobe tentu ngamobe jeyi ala baraka ba kan ngadi amota tambela no nyen wala mun nak mo
Baraka Baki Aissatou. Thank you very much. We've heard Aissatou's personal statement. Translate. I cannot do that. But I don't think it's very difficult. Can somebody summarize what she said? Mohammed, you want to make an attempt? Yes. Mohammed will, yes. Thank you for talking.
So basically what Aissattou is trying to say is to reiterate the need for a government to step up, in a situation like this. I mean, I think that is not new to say. We, as victims, continue to, relive some of these traumatic experiences, and that is continuous. That is what Aissattou is trying to say, that she and her family continues to relive these traumatic experiences, especially in the wake of this new government, which was expected to, solve most of these issues, and is virtually failing to do that. And so she thinks the government should really take this more seriously, especially, she mentioned that the president should take these issues more seriously and actually take measures towards it. So basically what she's saying is that, like we just called, is for government to disregard amnesty for Sana Sabali, as well as to take our issues more seriously, and of victims, especially of the people like her who have lost their families since the longest. I mean, I think they've been one of the first victims of this the 22-year regime of Jammeh. So she kept reiterating that victims need support and they need to be taken seriously, and issues needs to be addressed. especially that of Auntie Aisha herself. So that's basically what it is.
Thank you. My Mandinka is not very strong, but I think just to add to what Mohammed said, Aisha also made mention about the manner in which the consultation, the lack of consultation. She mentioned that when this happened, we should be consulted. Victims should be consulted rather, and so she talked about that, which is generally the same feeling that all the victims, and whether it's November 11th or all other victims of human rights violations are saying today and have been saying all the time from the beginning. Consultation is very much lacking. Next on the agenda, we have a personal statement by a victim from another team, and I will take this on and make a short statement and talk about some of the issues that are cross-cutting, not just necessarily for the victims of the November 11th massacre. Thank you. My uncle, 𝗧𝗥𝗥𝗖 was killed, was disappeared in 2013, April, along with 𝗴𝗿𝗆, and we later found out that they were killed. They were captured in Senegal, and we later found out that they were killed in Kanilai. And as a victim of human rights violation, I think we identify with the pain that the November 11 victims are expressing today. The pain of injustice. Like Mohammed said, they were the first victims from 1994. And all their children now are married, most of them, almost all of them, with grandchildren, so they would have been grandparents. They were here, and they're still fighting for justice, and we're still fighting for justice. And I don't think that any government has the right to deny us that justice. You cannot tell us that you are forgiving somebody on our behalf, particularly without consulting with us and asking us and taking our take and participating. The process, like Mohammed mentioned in the statement, was very opaque. The amnesty policy that was developed in January, we had an amnesty committee that was constituted from the beginning of the TRRC. There has not been any amnesty policy until very recently, I believe last month, which for us was that the amnesty policy was not given much weight. We went through the reparations policy and regulations. There was a lot of work that was done by that committee. There was a validation process. We were involved. We were consulted, and we agreed on the policy. Even though we have issues in the at the end of the day, but we are talking about policies here. So no victim family, no victim organization, no civil society organization was consulted in this process. That is wrong. And this is a recurring theme. Since the beginning of the TRRC, victims being disregarded. And again, we say that in the statement, we are not incidental in this process. There will be no TRRC or any transitional justice mechanism without victims. So you cannot disregard or dismiss the participation of victims. The other issue that we want to point out is that the 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏, the justification for the 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 process, I cannot understand. What we understand, and again, these are all hearsay that we are used to. We heard it from the media. There has not been any communication so far, just to be clear, that we did not get this information from the TRRC. They have not even had, it's been submitted to the minister, and they have not even had the decency, the commissioners have not had the decency to even tell us that we have done this. We have to find out from the media. That is totally wrong. And what we have had is the justification is that he has shown remorse, he has been truthful, and he has been punished. Truthful remorse, we do not agree. The families don't agree that 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 was remorseful. Well, we said, they have all said it. He said they were enemies. And he said in his statement that if it was to happen again, he would do it all over again. So Sana Sabali was not remorseful. So how can you forgive him? And for the punishment, yes, he was victimized. He went through hardship. But that is for another different situation. That is another illegal victimization that he should take up with the government. It has nothing to do with the November 11th for them to grant an amnesty. So we are urging the minister, that the government through the minister, that this should be disregarded. This recommendation should be disregarded, and we will fight and make sure that this is not implemented. This is not a recommendation we expected from the Commission. I must say that I am personally very disappointed and disheartened after all the hard work that was done by the Commission. For them to come up with this is really disheartening and disappointing, and really for me shameful. And I think that for me personally, I'm not talking on behalf of anybody else, I really put this to the manner in which the Sana Sabali testimony was presented. Sana Sabali was romanticized because he went through sexual and gender-based violation in his testimony. The testimony focused on the violations that that was committed against him, and not the violations that he committed so heartlessly, so brutally, without remorse, without apology. So I think that this stage was set by the lead counsel at that time to really romanticize and turn Sana Sabali into a hero. And we saw in the social media and everywhere else how Sana Sabali was being hailed for what he went through, when so many others went through the same thing or even worse. That is wrong. And I think the commissions really should reconsider themselves and what they are putting us through by making this recommendation. I don't believe it can be revoked, but really, this has put a dark spot on the good work that the commissioners have done for this country. And I really, I am ashamed that this has happened. So I will not go any further, but I just want to clarify one thing that has been a recurring theme in the statements here. The recommendations, the approval for amnesty was not done by the government. It is the work of the TRRC, Amnesty Committee, and the commissioners. So when we are talking about Adama Barrow and holding him responsible, it's because he is the head. So when we are talking about what is happening here, what we are saying is the TRRC's Amnesty Committee and the commissioners, their approval of the amnesty for Sana Sabali is despicable, and we will not accept that. And we are taking this opportunity, before the government has the opportunity to do anything about it, to urge them to disregard this statement. Some of us are calling back to Adama Barrow because we feel that we have been failed over and over again by the government of the Gambia when it comes to victims and victims caring for victims, taking care of victims, and victim participation in the process. So just to clarify, when we say Adama Barrow, we are right now the issue at hand. We are talking about the TRRC's amnesty approval for Sana Sabali, which has been submitted to the ministry. We know that the ministry is yet to come up with the white paper. They are working on it, and we are not saying that they are going to implement, but we are preempting that. We are urging them to not even consider it as an element to be implemented. We are not saying that it's implemented. So just to clarify about the specific issue, but in general, I don't think that we are happy with most of the process and how victims have been treated throughout the transitional justice process, and how we feel that the government is dismissing and disregarding victims at all times. I will end here and hand over the mic to Sheriff, the chair of the Victims Committee, to talk about it shortly, a short statement. Because yesterday we woke up to two disheartening, very disheartening news. The first was the amnesty for Sana Sabali, and the second was the military releasing the Aliu Jeng, the two junglers, Aliu Jeng and Ismaila Jammeh. That is a separate issue, but I will let Sheriff expand on that. Before I give the mic to Sheriff, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Awanjai, the widow of 𝗵𝗿𝗏𝗀, and Fatou Mane, my auntie Fatou, the sister of Bakari Mane Nyancho, just joining us. They are families of the November 11th, and that were just able to make it. The others, Mbaya Damba, and and the rest of them are not able to be with us today because of the short notice and other pressing personal matters. One of them is Sunkari is out of town. So I'll hand over to Sheriff to make a brief statement on the release of Aliu Jain and Ismaila Jammeh. Sheriff, thank you.
Good afternoon, all. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to applaud the solidarity of the various victims-led organizations that came together to organize this press conference. Will is also represented. WIF is represented by the most senior, the members of the organization, Priscilla 𝗬𝗎, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is also in our midst, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗀, National Coordinator, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏, and the various victim November 11 victims, and the entire victims community that are with us here today. And thank you to the media for being with us at a very short notice. First of all, I just want to make a brief statement on the release of the junglers, the Aliu Jain and Ismaila Jammeh by the Gambia National Army. If we can recall, the junglers were released immediately after the fall of Yahya Jammeh in 2017. 6 of them were detained by the Gambia Armed Forces. 4 were released during the TRRC process, and the 2 were continue to be in detention at the Gambia National Army. For some reason that the Commission ruled them on account that they failed to provide a full disclosure to the violations which were committed during the Jammeh era. That being the case, they had been detained for 5 good years without any charge, and to put them before a court of law. First of all, I think that is wrong and unlawful. We could only blame the Ministry of Justice for not doing justice to the plight of the victims. On Tuesday, a lawyer from the Gambia National Army called the victim center, trying to arrange a very, very short meeting to meet the victim center. In fact, they planned to come to the victim center, but later they called in the afternoon and decided that the victim center should go to the GAF headquarters on Wednesday, this last Wednesday. We were called. It was very prompt. We don't even know the agenda of the meeting. We went to the GAF headquarters. We were just being informed that the army, were going to release the junglers because they had a series of consultations with the Ministry of Justice regarding the fate of the 2 junglers that were held in their custody. Their continuous detention, is a violation of their rights without putting them before a court of law. And I think one can only blame the Ministry of Justice for that, because the army is not, it's not a judiciary institution to to put them before a court of law. We understand that situation. But we have been only called to be informed about their intention to release the junglers. We have no formal consultation, as regard to the decision that they are going to take. But we will further elaborate on that circumstances as we are going to have more consultation with the wider victims community, including the victims that were affected, to see how we can, bring them into terms with the current realities of the affairs of our state. So, there will be subsequent press statement to that effect. When we concluded that consultation with the general victim community, including all the sister victims-led organizations, we will come up with a fitting response to that effect. So I just want you to understand it that way. Our meeting here today is not about the release of the junglers, but more specifically, about the amnesty granted to Sana Sabally. We are so disappointed. We are devastated. We are disheartened by the decision taken by the TRRC. After all the hard work and the tremendous work that they have, done in the work of the commission, for them to only come up with a recommendation granting amnesty to Sana Sabally. Sana Sabally confessed to the killing, unlawful and illegal killing, execution of 11 innocent soldiers that were captured and in their custody, already in their custody. Sana Sabally confessed to giving, a command, to be in a command responsibility, and also to be, taking part in the shooting of the 11 soldiers that were, captured by them, that were in their detention. I think it is wrong, for TRRC, to grant Sana Sabally amnesty. We are calling and urging on the government through the Ministry of Justice to reject that recommendation of the TRRC. It is unacceptable, it is repugnant, it is a travesty of justice. So we condemn in the strongest possible terms that the victims community they are not happy with the decision. We are disappointed. We will do further consultation with the relevant stakeholders, including the Ministry of Justice and the TRRC. We have an MOU with the TRRC. By all indications, I think the TRRC failed in their responsibility and their commitment to honor that MOU that we have with them. There should have been a consultation with all the victims-led organizations with regards to the drafting of the policy and regulations of amnesty. But we have never been consulted. We engaged the Ministry of Justice a couple of months ago, I think about 8 weeks ago, with regards to the Amnesty Committee, with regards to the work of the Amnesty Committee and the lack of amnesty policy and regulation for a wider consultation, for the victims community and the CSOs to have their input in that policy. I think it's a disappointment on the work of the TRRC. I think I will stop here to allow journalists to throw in their questions if they have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. And yes, like you rightly said, the focus of this press conference, this press statement we are talking about is regarding the amnesty for Sana Sabally. But like I mentioned earlier, we had two pieces of news yesterday that really we couldn't not say something, but we'll be doing more consultations regarding the release of the junglers among the victims community and other stakeholders to put together a position on that, and we'll move forward. On the amnesty policy, I just wanted to highlight again that what Sheriff mentioned, and just add to the fact that It's not that we have not raised our concerns about the lack of transparency about the amnesty policy. It has been raised. It was even raised at a meeting that we had with the team from the Ministry of Justice. Yes, we know that they are not responsible for the amnesty. That is the work of the TRRC. But the lack of transparency, we raised that, and that we have not been consulted, and there has not been any involvement. And we were urging them to see how they can facilitate that, make that happen. And all of a sudden, as we know, all of a sudden, the policy was approved by the commissioners, and the policy went ahead and reviewed all the applications and made their recommendations. So definitely a very disheartening way of going about this transitional justice process, which is not a 1 day, 1 week, 1 year process. We have seen transitional justice processes around the world that are taking decades. South Africa, we have seen Sierra Leone, we've seen Liberia, they're still struggling. We definitely have a lot going for us in the Gambia, but we can do a lot more, and we should do a lot more. I was just joined at the table here by Mamadou Sylla, the brother of Mamadou Sylla, one of the victims, one of the soldiers that was killed. And I don't know if you, Awa, you want to make a short statement on Fatu before we get to the journalists on your behalf? Yes. Or maybe we can have, because we have 2 ladies spoke, we'll allow Mamadou to say a short statement, and then we'll invite the press, then we can later on expand after the press so that they can, before they leave us. Is that okay? Fatu, is that okay? Sure. Okay.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Mamadou Sylla, younger brother of the late Cadet Amadou Sylla. It's been a very tough day for us. So disheartening to come here again to talk about this kind of matter. For me personally, it's never a surprise to me. Because if we know the kind of government we have in place, we should all know where exactly we are heading to. The only thing that disturbs me is the side of TRRC. Because we know, as a victim of this country, we are totally betrayed by the government. The government betrayed us since at the initial stage. Since the releasing of those killers, the junglers, they never consulted the victim center. They never consulted the victims in the whole country. And they released the victims to go. They released the junglers to go on their way. They are in the street, and we are meeting with them. Nothing happens. We talk about it, nothing came out. Again, they have been doing series of those kind of things without consulting the victims. For this other one, that came from the TRRC side. That is the only disturbing side I have, because I was having a full confidence on TRRC. So for TRRC also to come up with this kind of statement is so disheartening to the whole victim families. On the side of my brother, we all know Sana Sabali. He's a murderer, together with 𝗿𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀. They are all murderers, and they are gang of bandits. They are all murderers. So you cannot just leave Sana Sabali to give him amnesty in this country. Because definitely people are saying that Sana is a brave man. Sana has spoken the truth. To me, from my own perception, Sana didn't tell the truth on his own volition. Because why? He knows that he is also one time a victim. And if Sana don't tell the truth, he cannot explain his own personal ordeals so that people will know what exactly happened to him. That makes Sana to speak. If not what Edward did, that's what him also is going to do. So there is nothing like Sana has spoke the truth. And he shows no remorse to anybody. We all saw it at TRRC when he was speaking. He was speaking comfortably. So because what happened to him at my time, that makes Sana also to come to tell us what exactly happened to him and what he did. So Sana, he is a criminal. He is a total criminal, and he is a murderer. People are saying Sana is brave. Sana is not brave. He's not a brave guy. Because if you see that Sana was running after people, so others are running away from Sana. It's because he was having guards who were having guns. Today, where is he? If I met with him in the street, he cannot beat me, and he cannot do anything to me. Even if I stand with him, if I don't hit Sana, Sana will hit me. But in those days, if you tell me, hi, I'll run away. Because of what? The guns. Now he took these people, this innocent life, he took their life just on no ground. Just out of jealousy and hatred, because that's how I see it. They committed nothing. They committed no offense in this country. Everybody knows that. But just to see one day, make your own plan, you allege them of making a coup d'etat, which is not true. Where's the proof? Since the day one, they cannot show any proof to people that these people are staging a coup d'etat. So they just took this innocent life like that. We never forgive them. For me and my family, on behalf of my family, I will never forgive Sana Sabali and 𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗀𝘀 and their gang of bandits. Because they make me not to complete my school, which is very dangerous. So, from my side, I will never forgive them. And Sana, let him know that this is a message for him. The journalists are here. I want you people to extend this message to Sana. Tell Sana Sabali that the late Cadet Amadou Silla's younger brother, Mahmoud M. Silla, that's my name, I say that on behalf of my family, I will never forgive him and 𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and let him know that death is imminent. Even whereas today they give him amnesty in this country. Sana's mind will never be at ease. That will never happen. Because he has taken innocent life. The day he was given those kind of orders, shoot them, kill them, and again to come to TRC, face the whole world, telling us that those people are enemies. That is a very strong statement. He says those people are enemies of this country. So death is imminent. One day or the other, he will join them. Today, if this government give him amnesty before Allah, I don't think there will be amnesty for him. Because in the Quran, Allah says that if you kill one person, one moment, you kill him. It's like you kill the entire human race. My brother is a pious Muslim. We all heard it from 𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 when he was giving his statement. The time Sana was given this order for them to shoot at him, he was reciting the Quran, a verse from Surah Tumaidah. So that guy is a pious Muslim. You take his life like that. Sana is a Fula. We are 𝗧𝗥𝗥𝗖. He is our bantamate. That is, we are having a jogging relation. So you cannot just pour down the blood of a 𝗧𝗥𝗥𝗖. You think that you're going to end up finally. Just only Sana's enjoyment didn't pass 3 months. When he killed these people, his enjoyment never passed 3 months. He was also belittled in presence of everybody, taking him to Mailman, tortured him there. He himself, from his own word, what they did to him in Mailman. They almost buried him. They buried him alive. He says that. And they were doing all kind of nasty things to him. That is a small payment from him in this world. What Allah is giving for him in the next world, that also is there. 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, after committing all this kind of heinous crimes, he says he's going to study law. Let him back any kind of decree in this world. He can defend himself at any court of law in this world. But let's see, maybe before Allah, he can also defend himself there. 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, kill people. And he's sitting at his comfort zone, thinking that he has gone. Let's go till the day. We never forgive them. And for this government, let us not expect anything good. Let the victim of this country never expect anything good from this government. If we are thinking that we're going to hear a good news from them, we are deceiving ourselves. Because we all know where we are going to. Even 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, today, where he is, if he should come to this country and started shouting for power, they're going to give him amnesty. Who is going to deny that fact? Are we not seeing that? The thieves are here. The killers are here. All these junglers, if you don't mind, one day or the other, we will sit there, we hear that they are all back to the army. If they are there to support them. So we should not expect anything from this government. For TRC, they've already failed the victims of this country. Even their white paper that they are talking about, that they are going to give to the government. I am not expecting anything meaningful from it. Was given Sana Sabali and amnesty, that's terrible. That's my statement.
Thank you very much, Mamadou. Thank you for those statements. We've had, I don't think it will be a different story from any family. It will be the same across the board. We will allow the journalists for their questions, and after that we can hear from Awa and Fata. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm Adam Martin from The Point. My question goes to Mr. Kijera. You made mention that the TRRC failed the MOU that they had with the Victim Center. So part of the MOU, maybe few points, most of the relevant points that you had with them that you perceived they failed, that I would like to know.
Thank you very much. A part of our MOU was about the continuous consultation with the victims community in any decision that the TRRC is going to make. I mean, that has never happened. I mean, that has never happened with the decision on the guidelines of the reparation. I mean, how the victims are going to be compensated. We have never been consulted. I think the victims community should have been part of the reparation committee to advise the TRRC on the needs of the victims. I think it should have been based on the needs-based assessment. I mean, rather than the TRRC deciding on their own, I mean, giving, the amounts of money to, the victims that are meaningless, that are worthless. Imagine, giving $50,000 to a victim. Imagine compensating a victim who lost a loved one, $600,000. That is peanuts. That cannot even buy a compound for that person. I think that is nonsense. You know, they have failed woefully, with regards to the matter of our MOU. It should have been the guiding principle, our rules of engagement with the TRRC. They have never honored a single bit of that MOU. I think it is disappointing, it is disheartening to sit here and also hear stories on a newspaper front page about granting amnesty to a very, very, brutal murderer like Sana Sabah, who confessed before a commission of inquiry about taking command responsibility and about taking part in the shooting of 11 innocent souls that were captured, and in custody. I think that is very wrong. Well, we are disappointed because we all expect that the junglers would have been put before a court of law long time ago. Yankuba Toure was tested in the court of law. I don't see any reason why they cannot put all these junglers before a court of law. So that shows the lack of competence, the lack of capacity with the Ministry of Justice. They have continuously demonstrated that with a series of cases that they have lost at the High Court of the Gambia. We have seen, the case of, the General Solbaji. It shouldn't have happened. He should have been at least charged, and they could amend the charges as the case proceeds. So we are disappointed. I think the army, we can't blame the army. They did what is right. You can't continue to detain the two soldiers, continuously for 5 years without being charged. All the blame squarely should be on the head of and the soldier of the Ministry of Justice.
Believe that the TRRC was here to promote impunity instead of addressing the issue of the victims?
Well, the TRRC was to establish an impartial historical record about human rights violations that occurred during the period from July 1994 to January 2017, and also make recommendations, for those that bear the greatest responsibility, to be prosecuted, and also, to be as a healing process for the victims to heal, and also to be adequately compensated for all this pain and suffering that they have been through during the Jammeh era.
To all extent possible under the law of this land. That's my answer. Thank you. We don't have any guarantee as to whether it's, but what we are relying on is our guarantee under the constitution of this country, under the law of this land, and the international instruments that the Gambia has signed up to. We are guaranteed our right to justice. Our right to truth has been taken care of by the TRRC and other TJ mechanisms that work, but we are relying on the guarantee of our right to justice under the Constitution and all the international instruments that the Gambia has to follow because of their signatories to this instrument. So based on that, we are going to follow our right and fight for our right until we get it.
They were not entitled to decent treatment as they were enemies and enemies cannot be treated properly. From the victim's point of view, reading this statement or hearing his words, what do we think is the reason for this amnesty? Because if we say this is threatening to say and very disheartening. So from the victim's point of view, what do we think is the reason for this amnesty?
In my point of view, and I believe that would represent a lot of other victims, is that there's compromise in the actions of the TRRC already. Because if, with everything that has been said as the precedence to what would give amnesty to somebody and all of that, I think it's very flimsy to give any kind of justification to what could be what could warrant amnesty, the granting of amnesty to such a, grave perpetrator like Sana Sabali. Because looking at it, Sana Sabali's crimes have contributed to crimes that amount to crimes against humanity. So you would really agree with me that it lacks common sense, it lacks basic sense at all to think that somebody, because I've seen something like a write-up that says, the man whose prominence has, whose atrocities has brought you to prominence has escaped the long arms of justice, and you, referring to the former vice president who has been denied amnesty, are in the net. I think it's very ironical, and I think the TRRC and that committee itself and the commissioners responsible and the commissioner that heads that committee are being compromised, or they are letting themselves be compromised, if they are not already compromised, and they're really deterring the spirit, of the TRRC's Never Again slogan.
If I may just add to that on the reason why the amnesty is granted, what we understand, like I said, right now we're purely going on hearsay from what we heard that the commissioners what persuaded them to give grant Sana Sabali amnesty was that he was truthful, he was remorseful, and he was punished. Again, like I said, what he went through had nothing to do with the November 11. killings. So he was not punished for those. So where's the justice for those victims? They deserve justice. Yes, he deserves justice, but he needs to pursue that. That cannot be at the expense of other victims whose rights he violated. The second part that Mohammed mentioned is the crimes against humanity. The TRRC Act itself says that you cannot be eligible for amnesty if your crimes that you committed deemed to amount to crimes against humanity. I'm assuming, based on what they have done, that they don't see the crimes that he committed as crimes against humanity. That's my assumption. I'm not saying that. But Sana Sabally has committed other crimes that are part of crimes against humanity, which exempts him from immunity, from my understanding. I'm not a legal person, but I've been made sure that we have done our homework and we have consulted. Because Sana Sabally committed torture and other crimes that tantamount to crimes against humanity rather. So we cannot see the justification for that, and we do not accept. We see this amnesty approval as illegal, and we will pursue it to make sure that it is treated that way and struck out from the implementation process. Adam?
I see it in a different angle, because for me, I think Sana played a drama, a short one. I mean, you and I were watching it. Because for me, I think he has the confidence that he was going to be, he would have been free. Because the sentiments that were shown by the TRRC during the interview, you and I know. I mean, at a point where somebody cried, somebody was asking questions, for me, I think that was a drama, and I think it was facilitated his release and his amnesty. For me, that's my take, that is my personal view. Honestly, I think he played a good drama, and he carried all of them. Most of them leave country. I mean, cried. You and I watch TV. So for me, I think that was a good drama for him to escape. But you and I know that Sana was one of the most brutal, and I have happened to witness some of the incidents that he has done when he was in the army. I worked for the Ministry of Health for some time, and I know there was a point when Sana was called in those days as the second vice chair to open and organize, to open something that the journalist came and he slapped it, stamped the camera. Some of us were moved aback because we couldn't understand. So you can see that this guy is a neurotic, he's a psychopath. And I think that manifests, that shows how brutal this guy is. So for me, as an individual, I'm not talking from the point of victim, I observed the TV and I was watching. It was facilitated by the way the TRRC also showed that emotion. They did not show it to any other person. It was only this. So I want to rest my case.
Thank you. My name is 𝗵𝗺 𝗍. I work with the IR TV. Wants to understand, do you really believe the release of the two jugglers has any connection to the former minister's statement that they don't have any ample evidence to try them before the court? Do you think this has any connection to that? To 𝗧𝗧, are you still with the belief that what you call the drama that is played by Sana Sabally before the TRRC has any connection to his granting of the amnesty or his personal relations with the lead counsel, 𝗧𝗥𝗥𝗖?
Well, thank you. I want to speculate on that, but with the statement of the minister, I think it is an indication that they lack the evidence to prosecute this jungle, as they have, alluded in the case of General Solbaji, because they said they don't have strong evidence to put General Solbaji and charge him before a court of law. So they will do further investigations as recommended by the TRRC. So, I don't just want to go further to make speculations, But what I can say, the victims are disappointed. I mean, with the way and manner the Ministry of Justice is handling some of these cases.
Thank you. Before I get to my question, I just want to add to what Sheriff said about the lack of evidence that the ministry is citing for this case of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and all the other junglers. I think that's a very flimsy excuse. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, for example, the commission, the Janneh Commission, found him wanting in terms of plotting with Jammeh to steal state funds. That's the grounds that they could have used, I believe. The TRRC came up with enough evidence and has recommended for prosecution. And those are all evidence that they could have used, in my view, or worked on further to make sure that their case was strong enough for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to be kept in custody as they continue investigations. So I don't think that the Minister of Justice did their due diligence. I think that really they are failing us, and they will continue the way that it's in hand. We have cited other cases before, and the case of my uncle is a sample where two of the men responsible for his abduction were held and charged, and the case was later dismissed from the court. So the consistency, the consistent incompetence is what I would want to use, really, from my personal view. It's been really disheartening, and we would urge the minister really to put more effort, more work. And we know that there are challenges, but when the Gambia ousted Jammeh through voting, we gained so much goodwill. We had so much goodwill capital. We could have banked on that to build our system, because really, for it never again to happen, we need to make sure that we have the capacity to prevent this from happening again. We don't want another truth commission. We want this not to happen again. So I think there's so much that could have been done in terms of building. So we really urge them to take this seriously. I don't think, I know, and it is a known fact that there can be development without peace and stability in any country. And peace and stability starts with justice. Coming to your question regarding whether the drama that Sana Sabali played at the TRRC, like Adam said, I am fully, in agreement with Adam. I am not surprised I'm disappointed by the granting of amnesty, but I'm not surprised, because from the day that I watched the TRRC's questioning of Sana Sabali, I was very furious, because we know the competence in the legal counsel or legal team that we have, and how, with even very little evidence, they can break down a strong man. So to take Sana Sabali's victimization and romanticize it to the point that, Sana Sabali has to turn into a hero after he has really done what he has done, the atrocities that he has committed in killing people. And Sana Sabali, how he was ruling. The time I graduated college and was working at the time that Sana Sabali was vice chair. And Sana Sabali was the most feared person in this country at that time. So to take his violation, which he was not alone, we have seen, Fatou Balde would be, I'm sure happy for me to say this, we have seen women talk about how they are violated sexually. And they continue using those words, alleged. But Sana Sabali, everybody believed him when he said that he was sexually violated. But women were questioned. And they took that and made it a big deal. So really, for me, I believe that the presentation and the good drama, like Adam puts, I think that's a very apt description. The good drama that he played really has contributed to persuading the commissioners, because I cannot understand on what grounds they would grant Sana Sabali amnesty. I hope that answers your question. So we have said that in the statement, and we will share it when we said it again. No, we were not consulted. The amnesty committee did not. We have consulted among ourselves, and know that none of us has been consulted. We have not been approached. We have expressed our frustration around that, and have around the lack of transparency in the process, but that still came to no avail. So we had never consulted with the amnesty policy, the application process, and anything else. And no single individual victim family, as far as we know, has been consulted. We are yet to have somebody come up and say that I was consulted. But as for the civil society, victim-led organizations, we have not been consulted. The questions, I will now invite our Njai, the widow of 𝗵𝗫𝗀𝗶𝗏, to give us a short statement on her behalf and of her family, and then we will open to Fatou Mane, the sister of 𝗏𝗫𝗀𝗶𝗏.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. gannaaw bu ñu sant yàlla di julli ci yonent bi ñu ngi sant suñuy waajur di gërëm it waa Victim Center. Sana Sabally man depuis bi mu testify lii lu ma séntu woon la because bi moo testify Sana Sabally li ko féegoo rek la doon wax li ko féegoo mooy moom li waxi yërmande la doon wax pour boppam waaye di defend boppam itam si ni ne ñële ennemis lañ ci moom ba tax mu éliminer leen unlawfully. waaye Sana li ma gën a métti si testification am bi mooy bi muy wax naan naka a snake when you cut the head the body is useless te snakes yooyu noonu muy wax mooy ring leaders yi di ay naka Basiru Baro 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 ak ñeneen ñi ñooy snakes yi nga xam ne when you cut their head the body is useless. loolu métti na ma trop ci statement yi naka Sana Sabally Sana waxu fi dara loo xam ne luy njëriñ victime ci la lu ko njëriñ moom luy defend moom ci boppam lu ko defend moom la fi waxu fi dara loo xam ne lu enu maanaam Sana reykati nit la Sana moodara kuy ut moodara ba dajee moom nga wuñeeku ndig moom bu mag bi la ñun lii bettuñu di am nañ naxar nag torop am nañ naxar si lii torop sax waaye ñu ngay jël yëpp jébbal ko suñ borom te dinañ ko yuuxu bi àddina bi yëpp yëg ne lii waruta am lii du waruta am waaye Sana su ko dara su justice ministry of justice defut dara pour Sana sax yàlla nga koy xaar si buntam bi nga xam ne benn la te ñëpp a fay jaar jërëjëf.
I would like to take this opportunity before passing the mic to our next speaker, Fatou Mane, to also say that it is important that we also let the government know, and almost every other stakeholder who has a stake in the transitional justice process at this point, to know that this is a great thing on the side of the TRRC that is expected to stamp a mark on ending impunity in this country, to allow for the continuity of impunity by granting or even proposing to grant Sana Sabally amnesty. This is the bottom line. We cannot go beyond this to say that the TRRC has turned into a vehicle to promote impunity by this attempt to give amnesty to Sana Sabally. Because to a lot of us, it means giving amnesty to Sana Sabally just means giving amnesty to 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏. This is the bottom line. And so, for any reasons, being it family, friend, is Sana is believed to be romantic with the TRRC on. We are making clear that victims to the government of the Gambia who have the last on the recommendations to approve amnesty, that it would be a great thing and a complete contradiction to the spirit why in 2017 we set up all these transitional justice mechanisms to remedy the wrongs that have been happening in this country, and to signal that dissatisfaction, bottling up, and piling up can resort to very undesired outcomes. And we are saying this, that the government should, and all stakeholders, especially the TRS at this point, because they have actually dropped the ball. And so it lies on the government to really stamp a mark and give us the reassurance that impunity is not going to continue and never again is going to be surely a realizable slogan. But at this point, the government, the victims and our community really, we have lost hope in the system, the setup that we could have really held with a lot of hope, that is the TRRC. It is just not acceptable for the TRRC to really tell us they are granting amnesty to the most criminal person that has graced the hall of the TRRC. So it really lies on the government of the Gambia, and especially the Minister of Justice, to really save us from this menace. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Auzubillahi min shaitan rajim. maa ngi leen di nuyu victim center ak civil organisation yi fi nekk mel ni wéel Aniker wéel Fantanka maa ngi leen a seet di leen nuyu ak seen taxawaay ci dëkk bi waaye dafa mel ni daal ñëpp benn kàddu bi la ñoo wax man dama feebar ni man maa gis nii waaye démba mënumaa lekka di whole day lii bi ma ko yëgee waaye li ma doon wax comme Adama maa ngi lay doole sa wax ji naka drama bi nga doon wax noonu kii dafa play drama di same day ba maa jógee ci TRRC dafa am ku ma doon àndal mu ne ma kii affaire am dara du si génn te noonu la demee yow nit koo xamante ne rey nga naka 11 innocent boo xamante ne defuñ dara yow mi nekk lead counsel sa yaram dawut ci loolu waaye kooku dafa toog nekkat naka victime nga toog janoo adduna si yëpp nga ne kooku ngay jooya waaye innocent yi nga xam ne naka doomi jàmbur te ñu ñooy hero seen famille man Bakar Mané lieutenant Bakar Mané ñanco mooy sama mag moom mooy breadwinner naka suñ famille bi kooku soo ko jëlee papam xalaat na ko ba yàlla jël ko sama yàlla na leen naka wéru bul waaye loolu yëpp ne mënut a daw yaram lead counsel waaye sana liñ ko def loolu la toog jooy man keroo laa disappoint naka TRRC te loolu wax naa ko fépp koo xamante ne dama dee waxtaanaa yow soo ne TRRC ma ne leen aw ma ci foofu suñ organisation yi fi nekk nii di ñuy jàppale boole ci naka victim center na ngeen jàppal loolu waaye man sama kaddu bi lu moo dem sana saabal man on behalf of naka Bakar Mané ñancu famille baalaluñ ko tey baalaluñ ko ëllëg ba ci penc fi ñoo fekkee ci ñooñu sana gënu ñooñu sana kaddu yi mu wax loolu sax tax na kenn warta jox naka sana ne dañ koo baalal ci dëkk bi sana yi fi def naka balaa moo ree naka 11 novembre gars yi ñëpp gis nañ ko ci dëkk bi lii dafa mel ni saagala si ñun victime yi ak victim center ak suñ organisation yi naka man noonu laa ko gisee waaye man li ma leen a wax yéen journaliste wax ci na génn gis nga ñun nekkuñ jaami kenn te kenn bëggul nekk victime yàllaa ñu ko teg waaye maa ngi ñaan nekk victime yi tamit nañu booloo ñu doon benn ñu joxante loxo di wax benn kàddu su ko defee ñu mun a dëgëral lii sax ñi man li ma gis naka Mr Kijera lii dañu war a am pour ñu génne naka maaj wane suñ naxar ne lii waru fii am man toujours li ma dee woon loolu mooy ne naka never again naka slogan bi naka warta nekk ne naka never again naka suñ jéemee ñi dañ ko war a jëfoo te jëfoo wuñ ko dañ am disappointment si TRRC di TRRC ñu nga am MOU naka victim center jéguñ ci dara sooy wax naka ñaari jongle si yi bàyyi na la soo ko seetee Mr Kijera li moon naka loolu mooy dëgg ay yow koo xamante ne mooy ndéem bi la kay oo nit ñi ne leen kaay leen ngeen rey diw kaay leen ngeen yóbbu diw kooku ñëw ngeen ne code boobu noonu musuma raté sol baay keroog biñ koo bàyyi mbokkam yi nii lañ taxaw naka di jubleet man dama taxaw fële naka di jooy dem jubleet naka ma taxaw fële naka di jooy loolu moo war a am si dëkk bi man de pour man Fatou Mané dama ne loolu dafa war a jeex si dëkk bi te dafa war a jeex maa ngi leen a sant di leen gërëm ngeen baal
jërëjëf Fatou jërëjëf Awa Mohamed balaa ñoo close Mamadou dafa bëgg a def benn appeal balaa ñoo close su ko defee ñu may ko kàddu.
Yeah, the appeal I just want to make is I want the central government to know that this exhumed body, they are still lying at the mortuary, and nobody is talking about it. We, the family members, we need their remains to go and give them befitting burials. Somebody cannot just be dumped in a big hole for 22 good years. You go and exhume their bodies, take them to the mortuary. We are now coming to 3 years. Nobody is talking about it. I don't know whether the journalists don't know about it. But for Mustafa Dabo, he knows something about it. Because some time ago, he once called me. But from Mustafa Dabo, we never had any journalists talking about it. And the whole country knows about it. Still, the remains of our relatives are lying at the mortuary. We need them. If the whole country have only one forensic expert, which is the same to this country. This country is dying. The whole country, only one forensic expert. That's what we have. So let them give us the remains. We go and dig one big hole. We put them there so that we can be praying for them. This is the appeal I want to make to the central government, and I want the media fraternity here for them to go with it. Let them also add their voice onto mine, so that they can complain to the government that we need the remains of our exhumed bodies that are lying in the mortuary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud. A very, very important element of all of this. You are not getting justice and you don't have the remains of your family members. In ending, we want to call on the government of the Gambia and all Gambians to honor what we started in 2017. The government, we acknowledge, came up with the transitional justice process without being prompted by the people. And we are relying on the will that you had at that time to dig up, no matter how difficult it is, to bring back that political will to make this a reality. Let's give victims their rights that they are entitled to, according to the Constitution, according to all the international instruments. Let us not continue to see actions that defy their words. The writings, the statements are beautiful, and the commitments being reassured on paper. We would like to see that in action. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming, for your presence here. It means a lot to us. And we don't feel alone. And we know that those that couldn't make it today are with us in spirit. So we thank you all.